Good morning and welcome to the Highland Waves podcast, coming to you from Marshbrook Studios, located on a bank of the world-renowned Margaree River in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Canada. On Highland Waves, we feature stories about the people, the places, and about those who come to visit us here in Inverness County. I'm Pat Wall, your host. My guest in studio this morning is Michel Soucy. Welcome to Highland Waves, Michel.
Thank you, Pat.
Michel is a semi-retired professional photographer who lives in the Acadian village of Sherricap, a community in northern Inverness County, Cape Breton. Michel visited us here in studio earlier in the year, and he spoke about his photography. Today, he will talk to us about his journey to recovery from substance abuse. Michel, you are a product of Valleyfield, Quebec, and you lived there for a time and moved to Detroit, is that correct?
It is.
Okay. Why the move from Quebec?
Well, I come from a long line of folks who struggled with alcohol. I come from my father was a bootlegger, along with his brothers and sisters, and they were violent. They weren't. My mother suffered a lot. So by the time I was 6 years old, we had moved up to Montreal for a short bit, and then once my mother finished her nursing courses and got her degree, she decided that we needed to institute some changes in our lives, and a geographic change was in order. So she took off to Detroit, got herself set up looking after a terminally ill woman for a year, and came back and got me a year later. I was kept in a boys' school, away from my father and his family.
Okay. Why do you think the decision was a wise one?
Yeah. We had death threats against us.
Really?
Once we were in Detroit, had a phone call. My mother received a phone call from her sister, who was a Catholic nun at the time, and she was informed that my father had been released early by, I think there was an error in the paperwork or something, and that there was, the word was that if we find out where those two are, they're done. So,
Not encouraging.
No, it wasn't, but there was a lot. I remember the fear, and I was encouraged just to go to school. If anyone approaches me, just run, scream, that there were people watching.
Okay. How did that decision affect your relationship with the remainder of your friends and other members of your family outside of your immediate family?
Well, I was young. I was 7 years old. I was 7 by the time we got down there. So being uprooted suddenly, and not really fully understanding why. I was a child.
Yes.
I have no doubt that had implications on my growing up and having an understanding of where I come from,
okay,
and my family dynamics and whatnot.
Okay. So how did life continue for you while you were in Detroit and going through the middle stages of, the hormones and all of that in middle school and then high school? How did you handle that?
Oh, I struggled. By the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was already dabbling in narcotics and ingesting. And I didn't do well in school. I barely scraped by the skin of my teeth, they would say. And by the time I was 15 years old, my mother discovered an ounce of a little baggie of marijuana in my top drawer. And I was given options then. She had remarried by then. She had
Okay.
dated and met a gentleman. And by the time I was 15, I ended up on the streets.
Really? There must have become a time when you decided you needed to get help or change your ways. What really pushed you to do that? What changed your mind that led you to say, look, I got to get out of this. I got to get a better life? Or was there a time that happened?
Well, By the time I was 17, I was caught with an ounce of marijuana on my possession, and I served a little less than 2 years for that in Detroit. I was incarcerated. I was charged and tried as an adult, and as part of a plea bargain, I served. I was charged and convicted as a misdemeanor as opposed to a federal charge. At the time, it was 7 to 10 years imprisonment I was facing. I was 17 years old. And part of that deal was after I finished serving my time, I would be deported back to Canada. I was a Canadian citizen still.
Okay.
And so it took me till the age of shortly before I turned 28. I was at the end of my first marriage. My first wife decided that she was going to get sober. We both met in a bar, and she decided she was at a stage where she needed to address her drinking, and we separated. A few months later, we were addressing our divorce papers that we were putting together, and she asked me if I would accompany her to go see some friends that she had been meeting for some time. And it turned out that that was a catalyst for me. That it was a room full of people that had similar difficulties as I had, and I had an opportunity to stop doing what I was doing and learn how to do things a little differently that might offer me some hope.
So what about help from professionals or people in the community? Was that the community that helped you in this regard? The group that you...
It was, we'll keep it, it'll remain anonymous, just to respect them, but
sure.
It was a room full of people, just everyday folks like myself. Professionally speaking, I had a neurologist suggest to me a couple of years previous to that I shouldn't be drinking.
Okay.
I have other ailments that I'm still under medication for. I suffer from seizures since I was 13.
Okay.
And he suggested that I shouldn't be drinking. Well, what I thought at the time, I thought, well, what does he know?
Okay. Yeah. How long did the process take you for you to realize that things were getting better for you?
Oh my gosh. I think it took a few years for that to really settle. Getting used to not drinking, getting used to not popping those pretty little pills that were placed in my hand, and learning how to do things differently. Showing up on time to my place of employment, I realized had a big benefit to any hopes of advancement in any organization that I might be employed within. And just learning how to communicate with people differently than the way I was. And so that process took time for it to produce results. And the results were really more about how I felt about myself, as opposed to anything physical or financial in so far as seeing tangible results. But it was more of what they call an inside job. It was how I felt about myself.
Okay. At what point did you feel that you were accomplishing things? Things were starting to go right for you then?
Well, I think much like alcoholism, they talk about an invisible line. There's a process point where, you may have been drinking normally, you could have 1 or 2 beers, but at some point, there's a line that's crossed where the drinking is no longer controllable. It's so far as how much I'm going to drink, what's going to happen to me when I'm going to drink. It's hard to pinpoint when that line was crossed, and I think the same thing is true for sobriety. There's a process. There's a point where I no longer fear picking up a drink, and so far as things really improving, it was a process that took that happened, and I began to realize that the people I was trying to help similarly, and that's all part of the recovery process, is trying to help others rather. It wasn't always successful as far as the others being able to achieve any degree of sobriety, but I realized that I was staying sober in that process. I no longer thought about going down to the corner and grabbing a bottle of beer or a bottle of gin, or going down and picking up a bag of weed, or whatever it was I was using at the time. But through it all, I was able to achieve not just a couple of days, but a couple of weeks, and then a couple of months began to add up, and then I began to look back, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've been sober a year, and then 2 years.
How did you feel physically during this period?
Oh, I felt like $1 million. I finally felt like for once in my life, I was achieving something that had value. Not so much how much I had in my wallet or what car I was driving, but I felt like I had the ability to live a life that I think I was meant to live all along. I didn't know how to go about it. I was so caught up in my fears and my anger and why am I feeling different? Why do I feel less than? And I suddenly started to realize that I had something that I could contribute.
Great accomplishment. Did you have setbacks along the way?
I don't know if I had setbacks. I had a lot of lessons. I never picked up another drink.
Okay.
I was very fortunate. I know people who have struggled for years in making several attempts. I had family members. I have my second wife lost her life as a result of her inability to get on top of an addiction to codeine.
Really?
That eventually took her life.
Really?
And so seeing that others around me didn't have the same degree of success as being able to achieve any degree of abstinence or sobriety, but yet here I was, regardless of the financial difficulties I may be encountering or the struggles in finding or keeping a job. It took years before I knew what I wanted to do with myself, and I didn't know where my skill settings were either. Mm-hmm. I never finished high school, right. And so I didn't feel I had the skill settings to be able to go into a professional setting or have a goal professionally. And so I think that the struggles were more related to employment and finding where do I really fit and what is it that I can do and what can I do well.
Okay. Did you feel discouraged at times?
I think the discouragement was more in a family sense with marriages. Before my present marriage, this is number 3 for me. So marriage number 1 was a lady I met in a bar, and we became best of friends. After we both sobered up, we divorced, and over the years we got quite close. But my second wife, I struggled. After 17 years of trying to get her to find help. She wasn't drinking, but she just couldn't get over the pill addiction.
Really?
100 aerosolates with codeine a day. She'd go through a bottle.
Whoa.
And then eventually she lost her stomach, and that didn't do anything. And we begged and we pleaded and we threatened and tried everything, absolutely. And that's when I started to realize that I was absolutely powerless over what other people can or should be doing. All I could do is do whatever it took for my own safety.
Did you ever come to a point where you didn't want to go on anymore? There was some moments where I felt like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But then I looked at the previous 14 years, 16 years, 18 years, and I thought, if I can go that long and get to where I'm at today, it's got to get better. There's got to be more to come. I see others, and that's the benefit I had with the support system that I had in place. They were the proof that things could improve for me. All I had to do is continue putting one foot ahead of the other. How has life changed since you've become sober?
Oh my gosh. We could be here till next week.
Okay.
Simply,
In general,
simply put, I don't feel hopeless.
Okay.
In any circumstance. I don't always know what, if I'm faced with a particular difficulty, marital, for example.
Yes.
Sometimes the answer doesn't come right away. Sometimes the best I can do is just accept that the answer will come. It may not be in the time frame that I think it should, but it will come. And over the years, I've come to recognize that it's never failed. It's never failed. It's just that what I think should happen, when I think it should happen, or how I think it should happen, is not necessarily the way that it should happen. So I just have to be patient.
Okay. Have you ever relapsed for a period of time?
Never.
Oh, that's great. Alcohol is such a large part of social life. Do you have difficulty in social settings since you're not participating in the alcohol scene? Do you avoid them?
Never avoided a circumstance or situation just based on the fact that alcohol was present. I recognize that a lot of people don't drink. A lot of people drink. Lots of people don't drink. But I had to learn to accept the fact that if I was going to have any success and contentment in my sobriety, is that I had to learn to accept the fact that alcohol is everywhere. It's in the restaurants, it's being served. It's other people's households. Venues-wise, once in a while, I've been in a position where I've gone to a tavern, for example, with someone who, we went to see someone play fiddle, for example.
Yeah.
But no, never struggled with the fact that the idea that, there was alcohol present.
So you've embraced, obviously, new opportunities and experiences since your recovery?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. You're a successful photographer, for one.
I took some courses in Montreal. Someone seen a couple of little pictures, 4x6 prints I had, and suggested that I might have something there, and that there was an institution, there was a college in Montreal that taught professional photography.
Dawson College?
That was Dawson's Institute of Photography. So out on a 2.5 year program, I completed 2 years, and then I was offered a position in a professional lab in the old port of Montreal.
Okay.
And where I was employed for 5 years processing film for other professionals.
Okay. Are there practices or routines you follow to maintain your lifestyle, your sobriety?
I still maintain connections with a few old friends from Montreal,
Okay.
connections. Other than that, I think one of the older, real close friends told me that if one of the secrets to achieving and maintaining long-term sobriety is don't drink and don't die.
Don't drink and don't die. Okay. What role does mental health play in your ongoing recovery, or anybody's ongoing recovery, as far as you're concerned?
I think it's vital. It's vital that I have the ability to be able to, how can I put that? We all struggle with mental health, especially these last 5 to 10 years with, changing events rapidly. And having someone that I can talk to about my demons. We all have stuff.
We all have stuff.
We all have stuff. And it's not necessarily bad stuff. I was told once that we're as sick as our secrets. And so there's people out there that they know everything. I don't have the fear of being found out about any particular thing about me because it's already been talked about. There's somebody already knows it. And I think that gives me a great amount of peace.
Sure, it would be. You're confident.
Much more so. Yes.
At any time, do you feel stigmatized because of your situation?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you wish more people understood about the difficulties of addiction and recovery?
Wow. That's a tough one. For me, and I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I was offered help, and it had often been suggested that I shouldn't be drinking the way I'm drinking, ingesting what I'm ingesting, that there's a price to pay for that. And I just couldn't understand that logic. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, what's the big deal? I see other people drinking. I see other people having a good time. That's what I want. I just want to have a good time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it took, I think it took what it took for me to be able to grasp that I can't continue this. And I think it comes down to personal experiences. One has to be ready to be able to understand, hear the message, and be able to apply it to themselves if that does apply to themselves.
Okay. What advice do you have for those currently struggling with substance abuse or a return to sobriety?
Wow. I had that conversation not so long ago with someone. I share a little bit of my own experience. I didn't want to die. You see, the last few months before I had my last drink, I had been contemplating taking my life because I just didn't see a point. And since then, it's been about simply wanting to live and doing whatever was necessary to maintain that, not just to achieve it, but to maintain that want to continue to not just live, but to have a life. But what am I willing to do about that? And so, if it meant by not picking up the first drink for today, then there's hope that if I can do that today, then tomorrow when it presents itself, if it presents itself, I can apply the same principle and the same lesson. The only difference is that I can't do it by myself. I need to be able to have someone that I can, or an organization that I can reach out to get that assistance and talk to.
Yeah. Are there any signs people should pay attention to during their daily lives that might be an indication they could end up in a situation where they're having could have difficulties with alcohol or substance abuse?
Well, for me, it was when I picked up a drink. I always got drunk. If I was offered a beer, for example, and I knew that there wasn't going to be the offer of a second one following that, I'd refuse it.
Okay.
So the intent was always there. And so whether I inevitably at some point lost the ability to control how much I drank, I think I was there from the get-go. But I know there are people that at some point in their lives they lost the ability to control how much they drank, whether or not they drank. Did it cause family difficulties, financial difficulties, the loss of a job perhaps, loss of their position within one's community perhaps as a result of what would happen.
Lots of implications that could take place.
Right.
How can listeners support loved ones who are facing similar challenges?
Different circumstances, different situations for everybody. I don't think the alcoholic can be forced into seeking help. There could be resources provided with the suggestion that should the individual consider the fact that they might have a problem, that there are places that they can reach out to for assistance in overcoming that problem and turning things around for them. But it really has to start with the individual.
Okay. You seem quite comfortable talking about your past struggles. How long did you take to get there, to be able to do that?
Oh boy. I don't think it was very long. I mean, for the organization that I was involved with, it involved a lot of talking about oneself and the difficulties and in the areas that I was having. And so I think that kind of opened the gate to be able to feel comfortable that I can talk about anything about my life. I don't have to fear it. It's not really all that bad. It's really in my head what I contrive it to be.
Yeah.
And so over the years, this is who I am.
And you have the confidence to go forward in that venue and be comfortable talking about it, and you are very comfortable talking about it, which is a great thing, not just for yourself, but for those who are listening and for people who could probably find themselves in the same situation. Well,
that's the hope, really. It's the idea that if I can do it, certainly anybody can do it.
Well,
that's the hope.
Yes, of course. What are your feelings about how the medical system treats those unfortunate enough to be dealing with substance abuse?
That would be a difficult question for me to answer.
You haven't had the medical system involved in your strategy or your way of handling what you're handling.
That's correct.
Okay.
I know people that have been directed by way of their physician or threatened in the family from a job perspective, for an employer, for example, get some help or you're kiss your job goodbye, and that hasn't worked.
Okay. Before we finish, do you have any words of encouragement for those struggling with abuse?
Wow. If you think you have a problem, just the mere fact that you're considering the fact that you have a problem, I think, says something in itself. And that if you do think you have a problem, there's help. There's many resources available these days that can point you in the right direction to get the help that you're looking for, and accept the good and the not so good, and finally find a measure of comfort that you may have been seeking for a very long time.
Are there a couple of areas that you would suggest or you think would be helpful for people, organizations or individual therapists or any of that sort that you are aware of that could help in this regard?
Well, there's one's physician can always help. There's a well-known organization, Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. There is also Al-Anon for family members or friends of someone who may be struggling. But they're not the only organizations. One can just open up a phone book.
Sure. Michel, you've had a long journey, and I commend you for your perseverance and your success. Many in our society are not so successful for many reasons, but I think it's important for all of us to be aware of their struggles and help them where we can. Good luck in the future, both in your personal and professional life, and thank you for sharing both of them with us. And thank you to our listeners. Don't forget to hit the like and especially the subscribe button so you can stay up to date, and please comment on our programming. Remember too that subscribing to Highland Waves is free. Our thought for today is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who once said, "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be." So long for now, Pat.